Risky Bitness. We're taking another trip to Beat 'em Up City with the follow-up to last week's Rushing Beat Rival Turf episode to see how the franchise redeemed itself. Before we get started, I would like to thank everyone for their likes and supportive comments. It makes it a pleasure to share my favorite hobby with all of you. You'll recall we discussed how Rival Turf was not well received in the West. It must have been popular over in Japan because in 1993 a sequel was released. The sequel is called Rushing Beat Ron Fukusei Toshi. Translated into English, this would be Rushing Beat Rebellion Clone City. Rick Norton and Douglas Build are back, two cops working their rushing beat, see what I did there, when they discover that an evil scientist has been building an army of clones. The action kicks off when they find that 3 of their friends have been kidnapped. It's time to take to the streets once again, beating up hundreds of palette-swapped enemies. For justice. Rushing Beat Ron is a huge improvement over Rushing Beat for a number of reasons. You'll notice immediately a major improvement in graphics. Rushing Beat Ron has much more colorful and detailed characters and backgrounds. It's adopted a comic book look complete with sound effect bubbles that appear when you hit your enemies. The animation is much cleaner. That's not all, the gameplay has also improved with much smoother controls and better movesets for the player-controlled fighters. The run button is gone and instead players run by double tapping in the direction in which they would like to run. In addition to this, a number of features have been added. Weapons and food are much more plentiful and often drop from enemies. You can throw a weapon by using the L or R button. When you pick up food or medicine, the character carries it until you press Y again to consume it. In the meantime, you can still grab enemies and clinch or throw them. Unfortunately, there are no more crates to body slam. You can also attack enemies while they're on the ground, though I found this to be kind of hit or miss. You have to be in the exact right spot. However, I did notice that if you stand over a downed enemy and keep hitting Y, they will get up to be punched. You can apparently reverse a grab as well, but I've never been able to pull it off. The A button now does a unique special move for each character with Street Fighter-like effects. Some clear the area around the player where others do not. You can also release a powered-up move by pressing Y and B at the same time. You still have Ikari mode where you get to be invincible, do more damage, and throw enemies across the room. However, this time they slide across the ground rather than flying through the air. There are a total of 5 playable characters, but you have to choose 2 to start with. The other 3 will become boss enemies, or, more precisely, their evil clones will become boss enemies. In addition to Nelson and Build, you have the Pro Wrestler Wendy, Ninja Kazan, and Judoka Lord J, each with different moves and different strengths and weaknesses. There are only 4 stages, but they are very long. Stage 3 took me over 30 minutes to complete. At the end of each stage, you will encounter a clone of one of your allies in a one-on-one battle in a unique arena. When you defeat the enemy, their good counterpart will join your team. In addition to being able to choose a new character when you use a continue, you can also choose a different character at the start of each level. This is nice because it gives players the option of trying out all the different fighters in a single playthrough. The only non-playable boss is the end boss, Iceman. As you reach Iceman's lab, as expected, the game setting takes a sci-fi turn. Hazards have been added to each level, like a helicopter that shoots at you, mines, and electrified floors. There's even a rooftop level where you can throw enemies to their death. Be careful, if you fall off you will not lose a life, but you will lose a large section of your health bar. It starts off pretty easy but gets much harder as the game progresses. By the end you'll be going through lives very quickly. Unlike the first Rushing Beat, Ron does not contain an intro cutscene, you jump right into the action. Just like the first game, you can set the number of lives and continues and difficulty level, and toggle Ikari mode on or off. There is a hard limit of 3 enemies on screen at a time and it's very noticeable. The game is still fun and challenging. The enemy design here isn't quite as wacky as Rival Turf, it does get boring, but fighting these guys in aliens power armor is a good giggle and you get to use a gun in the late game, so that's cool. It's a little weird that the gun does very little damage. You shoot an enemy and he's just like,
I've had worse.
I would say this game is on par with many of the arcade beat-em-up of its time. In spite of the absurdity of limited continues in a beat-em-up, the graphics and animation are some of the best on the SNES, and the music follows in its predecessor's footsteps. It's fast and frantic with lots of action and is tons of fun to play. So now, here comes the big question. We know Jaleco dropped the ball in the localization of the first game. Did they learn their lesson? Mostly yes. There are still some really corny decisions they made. The box art isn't as bad, but it's still pretty bad. Seriously, who is this guy? What is this supposed to tell me about the game? Is this a game where you play as Joe Pesci and punch through walls? clearly meaning to distance themselves from the unfortunate choices of naming their heroes Jack, Flack, and Uzi. They have renamed the heroes to Hack and Slash, the Brawl brothers. It's weird, but okay. The instruction manual does refer to them as Rick and Doug, however. The end boss's name has been changed to Dieter, which is actually a good change, I think. Iceman was too generic sounding. I guess they wanted a title that would be good to Western audiences, but quite frankly, I think they could have called this Rushing Beat Revolution and it would have been a much better title. The localization team certainly didn't disappoint with the story as it appears in the manual. Get ready to cringe. Well, it looks like just another afternoon down at the local gym. Our two friends Rick, better known as Hack, and Doug, aka Slash, are busy coaching their trainees in the finer points of self-defense. Because it's a tough world out there in the streets of Bayside City. These guys know all the moves from martial arts to pro wrestling throws, and they don't hesitate to use them. Hey, they're not called the Brawl Brothers for nothing. But wait a minute, maybe things aren't so quiet after all. We've got some serious trouble on our hands. The gym's 3 best fighters have just been kidnapped. You know who I mean. Lord J, Kazan, and Wendy. Lord J's a really big guy with a black belt in karate. Kazan is the ninja master. He's fast on his feet but carries a sword with him at all times, just in case. And Wendy, well, she's a lot tougher than she looks. No doubt about it, this girl can hold her own with the best of them. Uh-oh, more bad news, dudes. The kidnappers belong to a gang of thugs run by this psycho called Dieter. Believe me when I say this guy is way, way out there. He's got all these scientists working for him, creating hundreds of clones from the people he kidnaps. Dieter uses the clones as his own personal army, so naturally they're really strong, and really nasty. Who knows what evil plans lurk in that demented mind of his. So far nobody's been able to stop him, but I get the feeling he's messing with the wrong crowd this time. Back in Bayside City, Hack and Slash are making their plans. They've got what it takes, and they're ready for the fight of their life. With a little luck, they can rescue their friends, then put an end to Dieter and his gang once and for all. Yeah, those scum thugs better look out. There won't be much left of them when the Brawl brothers get through. Okay, that wasn't quite as horrible as the first game. Otherwise, the localization here is pretty on point. Some of the enemy names are changed, but they're not super cheesy. It does ignore that the main characters are police officers. The cool thing is that if you don't like the localization, you can play the Japanese version by using a cheat code. For some reason, they decided to default the difficulty to hard and leave rage mode off, which seems like an odd choice. If you play this game with the default options, you're in for a real challenge. The localization is unique in that it adds a maze feature to 2 of the stages. The sewer and carrier levels now have maze-like branching paths. It's possible to get lost and waste time and lives if you don't know which way to go. It's a cool feature, but a pretty weird addition. I guess it's supposed to break up the tedium of the beat-em-up action, and I think it actually makes the game a little more tedious. They also removed the slider enemy in the late game, which is good because that enemy is the worst. He just keeps juggling you and there's nothing you can do, so I was glad to see him go. Otherwise the game is virtually identical, so for the most part this is a fine localization. It even includes a few positive changes. I didn't find much info on how well this game sold or how well it was received. I don't remember it being very popular when I was a kid, so I think it most likely flew right under the radar. Next week I'll be continuing my Castlevania series with Super Castlevania 4, and be sure to enable notifications so you don't miss my final Rushing Beat video on Rushing Beat Shura. If you like this content and would like to see more, please give me a thumbs up and write a quick comment to let me know what you like about the channel. Finally, if you want to support the channel and help me grow, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. I also have some affiliate links in the description that you can click to buy yourself some cool gear and support the channel. Until next time, game over.